We hear the word security thrown around all the time. National security, financial security, personal security. But in a world that feels like it's buzzing with global threats and personal anxieties, what does it actually mean to be secure? What is it really? So today, let's try to unpack that. We're going to peel back the layers from the biggest global scale all the way down to you and me.
All right, so let's start at the very, very top. Global security. And when you talk global security, you pretty much have to talk about nuclear weapons. Now, there's a common idea out there, a claim that's been reported pretty widely, that the United States has the biggest nuclear stockpile on the planet. But is that actually the case? Let's take a look at the numbers.
Well, when we actually look at the data from the experts who track this stuff, the picture is a little more complex. It looks like Russia is estimated to have the most warheads, with the U.S. not too far behind. And then you've got China. Now, their stockpile is smaller, for sure, but it is growing fast. So this isn't some simple, old-school two-way standoff anymore. It's a much more complicated multiplayer arms race.
And look, this whole thing, it's not just a numbers game. It's about technology. Russia recently announced they've successfully tested some new advanced systems. Think nuclear-powered torpedoes. So they're not just building more weapons, they're building totally different kinds of weapons, and they're claiming technological superiority. That just raises the stakes for everyone and really changes the nature of what a global threat even looks like.
And this right here, wow, it just perfectly captures the kind of high-stakes, almost apocalyptic thinking that's wrapped up in all this. This image, which came from a presentation about Russia's nuclear strategy, has the caption, "And the stars shall fall from the skies." I mean, that's some heavy, almost biblical stuff, right? It really underscores the catastrophic potential we're dealing with. This is security at its most existential level.
Okay, so you've got these huge, kind of scary global threats looming. What's the response? How does a country even begin to build security for its people? Let's zoom in a bit, from that global stage down to the national level, and look at what we could call the architecture of defense. Well, here in the U.S., the big player is, of course, the Department of Defense, or the DoD. And their mission statement is about as clear as it gets. Their job is to deter war and ensure the nation's security. This is really the cornerstone of how the country projects its strength and protects its interests on that global stage we were just talking about.
And man, it is a massive organization. You've got the big branches we all know, the Army, Navy, Air Force, but you also have the Joint Chiefs of Staff, all the different intelligence agencies, and these specialized combatant commands. Every single piece has a very specific role, all coordinated from the Pentagon, to create this comprehensive defense structure for the country.
But here's the thing, national defense isn't just about, tanks and fighter jets. A huge part of it is built right into our legal system. We pass laws to deal with threats, and not just from other countries, but from inside our own borders too. This shapes security on a much more local, granular level.
I mean, take this for example. There's a federal law that makes it illegal for someone convicted of a violent felony to own body armor. Now think about that. This isn't about stopping a foreign army. It's an internal security measure, designed to keep defensive gear away from people who've already proven they can be dangerous.
And that gets us thinking, right? Security isn't always about violence and weapons. What happens when the thing that's making a community unstable isn't an invading army, but the simple, powerful threat of people not having enough to eat? Is that a security issue?
So let's zoom in one more level. We went from global to national, and now we're going to look at the direct threats people face in their own communities. This is where that abstract idea of security becomes a very real, very tangible domestic reality. A really good example of this was a situation down in Texas. There was a potential cutoff of SNAP benefits. That's the Food Assistance Program. And the threat wasn't just to the families who needed that help. It was a threat to the whole local economy. It could have actually forced small grocery stores and other local shops to shut down. It's a perfect case of how economic instability can be a major threat to a community's security.
So you see what's happening here? At the exact same time, a country can be dealing with two totally different but equally destabilizing threats at home. On one hand, you've got violent extremism, like this case in Alabama. And on the other, you have widespread economic insecurity. Both of these things eat away at the sense of safety and stability that holds a community together. All right, this brings us to our final stop, the individual. Because at the end of the day, all these layers we've talked about, global, national, community, they're ultimately supposed to protect the person. So what does security actually look like, and what does it feel like on the most personal level?
Well, what happens when your personal security is violated, when you become a victim of a crime?
The justice system actually has a framework to help. In the U.S., it's built on these 4 core principles for victims' rights. Basically, they say that if you've been harmed, you have the right to be informed, to be protected, to be heard in court, and to get restitution. It's a way of trying to restore a sense of security through the legal process itself.
And you can see how this plays out in real life. In the investigation into the killing of Charlie Kirk, this text message, I'm sorry, became a crucial piece of evidence. Now, for the victim's family, finding this isn't just some random detail. It's how they can exercise their right to information, how they can participate in the legal process. It gives them a way to seek justice and hopefully regain some sense of control.
And that's a really key point, right? Personal security isn't just one thing. There's the reactive part, what you do after something bad has already happened, like seeking justice. But there's also a proactive side, the steps you take to prepare for and maybe even prevent bad things from happening in the first place. And probably one of the best tools for that proactive side of personal security is something called a contingency fund. Most of us just call it an emergency fund. The idea is so simple. It's just a pot of money you set aside to handle life's curveballs, a surprise medical bill or losing your job. Think of it like your own personal defense system, a buffer that protects you from the financial shocks that can totally destabilize your life.
Wow. So we've gone all the way from nuclear arsenals down to a rainy day fund in your bank account. It's pretty clear that security isn't one simple thing. It's this complex, tangled web of ideas, from global deterrence to having a few months of living expenses saved up. And that leaves us with a final question to think about. Are these different kinds of security competing with each other for our time and resources? Or are they all, in the end, just 2 sides of the very same coin?